All right, just wrapping up Thursday's edition here of Culotta the Prince in the studio where it was active. No guests this morning. We kept it all to the sound from yesterday's press conference up at the 5th floor of the Athletic Administration Building on LSU where Les Miles introduced two new staff members. Kevin Steele is defensive coordinator, and, of course, the Tuesday regular right here on Culotta and the Prince, Ed Ogeron, is the newest defensive line coach. And, Prince, you and I were there. We had an opportunity to sit down with all three guys. You had one-on-ones with Steele and Miles. You and I had a chance to talk to Coach Ogeron. And I know it's tough not to win these things, but it is possible to lose the press conference. And, overwhelmingly, they knocked it out the park.
Yeah, the first impression was very favorable there. And I think that, for you and I, we understand who Ed Ogeron is. I think the people who listen to our show understand who he is. It now becomes a situation where to the people outside of this market, who is Kevin Steele? Who is Ed Ogeron? And I think what you saw from Kevin Steele is a guy who's very organized, a guy who's very I think the way that I would describe him yesterday was thorough. He answered questions. He didn't just give you out a soundbite. He answered questions. You could tell he's worked for Nick Saban in the last couple of years just because of the way he's polished and the way he answers some questions. But I think overall, those two guys in their first impression for LSU fans, standing up there in the dark jackets and the purple ties, I think it was very favorable.
You learn anything about Steele in just your brief conversation with him one-on-one or while he was up at the podium?
Yeah, I totally did. I learned that he's not – if you ask him a question, you're getting an answer. And a lot of times in coaching, you'll get, like you say, the coach speak, the cliche. We got an answer. I asked him in the one-on-one about the situation, how it ended at Clemson, and he was very thorough in his answer, saying, "Hey, look, we won the ACC that year, but unfortunately in the bowl game, it was a debacle. Someone had to take the fall for that. I'm the guy who was the head of that defense. I took responsibility, and I was the guy who lost my job." In talking with him, and also in talking with Coach Ogeron about how much different they are than the last time that Kevin Steele was a defensive coordinator or the last time Ed Ogeron was coaching, which was over a year ago. Both of those guys talked about those experiences and how those experiences are going to make them better at LSU. Now it's just about seeing what those guys are doing. They both got on a plane this morning, went out recruiting. They're already on the job for LSU.
Yeah, dead period lifted was my next question. It was kind of talked about yesterday. You could be compiling almost like a recruiting dream team, but you can't leave out the X's and O's and what this guy brings inside the coaching room and in between the lines.
That's the big key here, Jordy. We want to see both of those guys. We want to see how those guys impact LSU's football team on the field. Spring practice will be interesting to see how those guys are. I think you're going to get a much louder defensive line group than you had under Brick Haley. I think it's a different personality there. I think also at the linebacker position, John Chavis was a guy who was loud and boisterous. I think Kevin Steele is more of a guy that's going to be more kind of by the book. I think that what you're looking at here is some of those changes may bring some different energies to the defense. And while I know that John Chavis and Brick Haley were really good coaches, I always think that anytime you have an opportunity, especially when your head coach has been here for 10 years, this will be his 11th season, to add some new energy and some new enthusiasm into the program. That's not a bad thing.
All right, check out Tiger Tracks, a special edition of at 1045ESPN.com. It'll be a part of today's podcast. Tomorrow, LSU does have scheduled a press conference up at the 5th floor about the future of some underclassmen. We know the fate of Daniil Hunter, Jalen Collins, and Quan Alexander. Tomorrow, or today, you'll learn about Gerald Hawkins and Vidal Alexander. That'll all be tomorrow presented in a press conference form.
Yeah, and so looking forward to see what happens with that. The deadline is this afternoon, so we'll pay attention to that the rest of today. Also, today we had an interesting phone call.
Yeah. Jason called us up wondering why we were talking LSU football at this point of the schedule.
So there are other things going on in the world of sports.
Well, he wanted a little gymnastics and golf, but I don't know if it's that part of the calendar.
We'll give him an opportunity to talk golf. And Jake Terry, the LSU Sports Information Director for Gymnastics, and Coach DD, we'll get them on to talk a little bit about gymnastics. We've talked a lot of LSU basketball. Who's had Johnny Jones and his staff on more than we have?
Jason. He has. Culotta the Prince, weekday mornings, Monday through Friday, 7 to 9 a.m., 1045ESPN.com is where you can find all the material, on-demand, podcast. We're on Twitter at 1045ESPN. Search us on Facebook as well. Cade Wassan, Derek Podamski, the Prince, Jordy Culotta, James Harrelson, our producer. Have a good day.